There we go. Okay. And so, welcome everyone. If you have just joined, why don't we start with introducing the panelists? If Kanako, you would like to go first.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Kanako. My pronouns are she, her. I am currently an elementary school teacher in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. I'm a third culture kid returning to the international school community. I identify as bi, queer. I'm out to my friends, colleagues, and students, but not my very conservative Japanese family. So, yeah, that's me.
Cool. Thank you for the introduction. All right.
My name's Justin. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I'm an ALD coordinator in Chiang Mai, northern Thailand, and I've taught previously in South Korea and Kuwait, and I actually met my husband in Kuwait. I'm originally from the US, identify as non-binary, queer, half Latinx and white, neurodivergent. I'm on the autism spectrum, and I'm out to everyone, family, friends, colleagues, students, parents, just kind of everybody. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Hi all, Dr. Emily Meadows. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm an LGBTQ consultant for international schools. So I am myself pan. I like the term queer. I use the term queer as well. But I work professionally with international schools to support policies and practices for greater equity and belonging for LGBTQ people. And I work specifically in international schools because this is the context that I know best. This is the context that I call home. I'm from the US, but I grew up in international schools and worked for many years as a school counselor before going into private practice as a consultant. So now I'm based in the Netherlands. I work all over the place, and I also teach at the George Washington University in our graduate program on LGBT health policy and practice, where we support medical practitioners and mental health clinicians to make their practices more inclusive as well. Really happy to be there and a big fan of the work of ODIS.
Thank you so much, Emily, and welcome to all the people who have just arrived. Just so you know, the meeting webinar is being recorded, so it will be available as well to those who couldn't make it. All right, Giancarlo.
Unmute again, sorry. Hi. Okay, well, my name is Giancarlo Picato del Rosario. My pronouns are he, him. I identify as gender fluid, and I think I'm gay. Also, I pretty much the international school context has been my life from 1979 to 2022. Those are all the cities I've lived in. By passport, I'm Spanish and Filipino, but just having lived in so many places, I also do identify with many other countries as well. My background's in advertising. I've worked in international education for many years, and currently I'm studying UX, UI design at a boot camp here. So I'm very excited. I've been working as a volunteer at COGAM, which is an LGBTI NGO in Madrid, as a workshop facilitator. And now I'm at the information services booth at the NGO where I go once a week. So I've also been administering the International School Educators LGBT group since 2019, and it's really great to see how much it's grown and how all the networking and the events and the initiatives that are happening throughout the international school community. And it's really great to be part of ODIS. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm really excited for all the people who are here as well. So many people have shown up, and for all the panelists. Your turn, Douglas.
Hi, my name is Douglas Beam, and I identify as a gay, queer or queer male. My pronouns are he, him. I teach work at the International School of Amsterdam. I'm the middle years program coordinator, MYP. And I am also the site director for the Global Online Academy. If you haven't heard about that, it's a really cool consortium of schools that come together and offer interesting classes for students. I also lead the school's GSA. And in my spare time, no, not in my spare time. Actually, I've been working on my Doctor of Education degree with a specific focus on a research focus on gender and sexual minorities in international schools. So as I've dug into this program and working towards my doctorate, there's a huge gap in research about international schools and queers in international schools, almost from every perspective, teachers, students, leaders. There's almost nothing written about queer leadership in international schools. So I'm trying to help provide some research that will fill some of that void. As you just saw, as I was kicking my son out, that was one of the boys that just walked behind me. And yeah, so I've got two boys that also go to the international school where me and my partner both work. So we're a little gay family that goes to school every day on our bikes in the Netherlands. That's about it.
Thank you. That's a really great introduction. I just love the idea, like not only having a queer teacher at school, but like having the whole family there. It's just so great for normalizing queer families around us. And so now let's have a quick introduction. A lot of you probably came here because you already knew Organization to Decolonize International Schools. If you found out about us through a different medium, please let us know in the chat like how you have heard about us. What basically started our movement, well, I think the movement was already going on, but what started our particular initiative and the collective around it was when my fellow co-founder Clara had the idea to start a petition in June 2020 about decolonizing the IB curriculum. And since then, we've had meetings with the IB and have done a lot of projects. This would actually be our second webinar that we are organizing and hosting from scratch. We previously did a webinar with two different sort of DEIJ, decolonial student groups in two different international schools in Singapore. You can find all of that actually on our website, which we have recently revamped. So lots of things here. This is where you can also find our resource list. And yeah, there's a lot of, you can learn all sorts of things about us via our website and our social media. This is a sort of map of the collective teams that we work with and organizations and initiatives. A lot of really great people that you can all check out, and I invite you to do that in your spare time. And so ODIS itself is actually founded by myself and my friend, lovely Clara. Would you like to introduce yourself, Clara?
Yeah, I can do that. Hi, my name is Clara. I use she, her pronouns. I'm British Portuguese, currently based in the UK, but I grew up in several places in Europe and in Uzbekistan, attending international schools. So I completed most of the IB continuum. I'm an IB kid, and I identify as bisexual. And actually, I realized that more after I left school, because there wasn't really representation within school. Like, it wasn't even really talked about, like sexuality and gender identity, etc. And yeah, just also experiencing thinking about bi-erasure, because I am in a heterosexual relationship. So do I count, kind of thing, are questions that I've been asking myself. But yeah, that's me. Thank you all for coming today. I'm so excited that we could put this together.
Yeah, I'm really excited for all the things that will be discussed here. So my name is Swai, pronounced Swai as it says here. I'm French Vietnamese. My pronouns are she, her. Currently, right now I'm in the UK, but I live in Paris. And I met Clara in Uzbekistan, and I grew up around African, Asian in 8 different countries, moved around a lot. Both of us are teacher kids. Both of us are IB kids. I also identify as bi or pan. I'm still also struggling with a lot of internalized homophobia and bi-erasure, particularly because it's connected a lot to my identity as a half Asian person and feeling that queer women in general, and especially Asian queer women, are not represented on screen. So it's just hard to feel legitimate in a lot of ways related to that. And so why don't we start with our first topic, where Douglas will be able to also introduce his study. We were wanting to ask the panelists about what kind of queer role models you had growing up in international schools. If you went to international schools, the lack of thereof, what is different about having queer role models within school versus outside of school. If you've noticed a lot of queer role models in international schools, and things like that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, do you want me to jump in and just explain a little bit about what I'm researching?
Of course, yeah, kick us off.
What I'm really interested in is sense of belonging in school for queer people, and whether or not having visible queer leadership in a school impacts the sense of belonging in the student. So what I'm looking for are I'm right before I'm allowed to officially recruit. So I'm just trying to stir up some interest about for potential participants in this study. And I'm looking for people who have been in international schools in the last 10 years, who they themselves might identify as being queer, and who have been at a school where there's visible queer leadership. And I'm defining leadership very broadly. Basically anybody in any sort of leadership capacity, if it's a teacher leader or an administrative leader. But really what I'm looking for is some people that can tell their story about their own queer experience in an international school when there has been a queer leader as well. And I'm hoping to determine if that has an impact on sense of belonging in schools.
Cool. Thank you so much for introducing that, Douglas. Do you want to kick us off with whether you had any role models growing up in school, or how you came to?
Well, I think for me and where I am as far as what year I was born and when I went to school, I graduated from high school in the year 2000. To me, that meant that there wasn't much visibility in my public high school in the United States. I had definitely teachers that I suspected being queer, and I knew what that was, and I knew what gays and lesbians were, but what I recognized in myself, I didn't really see represented in other places. And that would just be speaking about the teachers. That's not even talking about larger leadership structures as well. I went to school right around the time that there was starting to be some infiltration into the media of LGBTQ representation, and I remember that being very affirming, but not seeing that in my localized context as well. So that's sort of where I was. And then when I started out as a teacher in the early 2000s, I started teaching in 2004. That was interesting because I wasn't out to start with. I didn't feel like I could be out and teaching in an elementary school. That changed I think I came out to my parent community and teachers and students starting about 2008 was so about 4 years into my teaching career. But that even took me a little while to get to feel comfortable enough and secure in my job enough that I could do that.
Thank you. Did anyone else, any of our panelists also have similar experiences in terms of feeling that you had to kind of establish yourself within the schools before you came out to your community, or any thoughts on? I know we have a huge list of questions here and we probably wouldn't be able to get through all of them. Yeah, Kanako, go ahead.
Yeah, just like Douglas, I didn't really have any role models, whether that was teachers or older students. Something I am noticing now, though, is the people I went to school with. I graduated high school in 2013. People I went to school with have been coming out in the last maybe 5 years or so, and so it seems like for us, people our generation, maybe once we went sort of outside of the international school environment into universities, that's kind of where we were kind of able to come out. Granted, I'm talking about people I went to school with in Asia. And so, and a lot of us have gone to the West for university. And I think maybe that's one of the biggest reasons why a lot more of us are feeling a little bit more comfortable coming out. So I guess I'm just talking about that last question. Like I think that maybe the location of the international school kind of plays into how comfortable you are in your community and in your country.
Thank you, Kanako. Yeah, I definitely think having different context can definitely change how you experience yourself and your identity. Yeah, Giancarlo?
Hi, thank you. Having graduated in '98 from an American international school, didn't have any sort of role models or anything, queer role models. At that time, I mean, I think what set me apart was mostly I was being half Asian and half Spanish, so I was dealing mostly with the cultural issues and racism issues at that time. So it wasn't even in my vision being queer, even though I was labeled as it, I just didn't feel that way. But yeah, so that was kind of my experience in the 90s.
Thank you, Gian.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for those of you who've shared so far. I think it's really interesting when we're going to continue doing this as more of a series, because we have some queer students who are here today, and hopefully there'll be more who will want to join in and join the discussion to maybe compare how much they feel like it's easier to be open with their sexuality or gender identity today. Definitely, like when we started putting this panel together, I think we had the idea when Douglas first reached out to us, actually, and we thought, actually, yeah, imagine how big of a difference it would have been if we had queer adults like role models in our school, because for us, the notion was kind of like that this is a new thing, and like, you know, people like my parents or my grandma would have thought, oh, this is what kids are doing these days. And so like we were expected to sort of be the example for future generations. Like we weren't even thinking about future generations. We were kind of just figuring out how this works these days for ourselves. And there were shows like Glee and things like that where there were, well, straight actors portraying queer people sometimes. Yeah, I mean, when even for people of our age, like Clara and I, we started realizing more when we left school. And definitely, like when I went to my first Pride and when I first started I went to my first, what was it called, drag show maybe a month ago, and it was amazing. And I had started reading Alexander Chi, and it was and Alexander Chi is also a mixed race, Asian American gay man, and he talked about his experience doing drag. And that's when you realize, like, even though you feel like you grew up in a more progressive time watching TV shows and seeing it represented in a way on media, it's so different compared to having it normalized, like every day, grown-ups around you, people around you. Like I went to art school and I saw for the first time like an actual lesbian couple who were my close friends, and I was like, wow, like, you know, it's not just all the drama that is depicted online, like through shows and things. It's also just normal human relationships, you know. They're just day by day like stealing each other's candy bars and like going to school and whatever. Justin, did you want to say something? You're on mute.
I clicked the raise hand button on accident. Yeah, I was just mulling over about being or like in a leadership sort of position and being sort of, as I guess, a role model. I don't really see it like that, but I'm not in a titled leadership position, but I lead a lot of different initiatives at school. However, that's being sort of the only sort of, there are several other queer teachers, but I'm the only really out queer teacher that's more visibly out and visibly queer. And yeah, it's very much a part of my identity, and I, am very open about it. But that's also created sort of a sense of hypervisibility for me, where I'm kind of always in trouble with someone or whether it be a parent or another teacher or another, or an administrator. So it's been interesting kind of playing with that dynamic. I'm always kind of having to defend myself. And I was just thinking, it doesn't really matter if students see me as a role model or not, because it's just not a safe place for queer people, with students and for teachers. So I'm just thinking about how really the school systems need to change in order for, role models to really kind of exist and to thrive.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. We're actually going to be on one of the next slides talking about safeguarding for queer people in international schools with a video from Sadie Hollins. Do any of you, have you ever had queer or potentially queer students trying to reach out to you to ask you questions, or did you feel like they were ever wanting to talk about to you, but they never really had the courage to? And I know, like for Janka, for example, you started the various clubs that you're going to talk about later. So maybe some of them might have even reached out to you to start an initiative. Is there anything you'd like to mention about that?
Sorry. Well, as the experience as a teacher, I've been a primary elementary teacher, so not really, not really at that age. However, a lot of them have asked me, if I had a boyfriend, all this right away, so there was definitely that curiosity. In terms of starting up clubs and all this, yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to see ways gender and sexuality alliances at different schools can kind of communicate and kind of grow together and see what it is how it is they're developing and what sort of challenges they see in terms of in their schools and their host countries, and in terms of families and faith and all sorts of topics.
All right. Cool. Thank you for sharing. I had a point that I wanted to add, but now I've gotten distracted. But this is definitely something that we can continue talking about. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, my last question was, have you noticed in international schools, because it's an international school, like certain groups of people, whether it's like by like where they're from or whatever, who you feel have treated you differently because of that? Like, for example, if you're in an international school in China, if like the Chinese students have regarded you in a different way, or is that something that you've noticed in any way?
It depends on some countries. Some countries are more open, but let's say the more conservative ones have simply just labeled you, just have in their mind tend to just label you as the gay one or the queer one, and that's kind of all they really can see in you. That's been, I think, my experience growing up, and also as an educator in particularly countries where Sharia law is the law of obedience and living.
Mm-hmm. I saw a lot of nods there from the panelists, and yeah, I imagine it must be, like Justin said, having to be defensive all the time, but also like trying to be taken seriously because you're an educator, because you are, so to speak, you have this authority over them as students. Yeah, if anyone in the comments has anything they want to add to that, please let us know. Why don't we move on to the next topic? Well, here we go. If Giancarlo, if you wanted to talk about the purple couch, our purple couch, and the
for sure. I'd love to talk about. I did have a little bit of a presentation that I'd love to flash through, if that's okay. I'm not sure if I don't see that I have access to sharing.
Sure, I will provide. I'll let you share that if you
Or I think you have
start
the
off.
link. I think you have the link to the
I
presentation.
do, yeah. Let me find that in the drive.
Okay.
Here we go.
I'll just have to tell you when to click.
Sure, of
I'll
course.
just go click.
Yeah. And so for those who, I don't know if a lot of new people have arrived, but just to let everyone know, this event is being recorded, and you will be able to. Why can't I find it?
Is there a way I can share it, or?
Yes. Sorry, I'm just a bit technologically slow sometimes.
It's okay.
All right.
I've added you as a co-host, Gianca, so you should
Yeah.
be able to share now.
Okay. Let me see. I have more options. Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Perfect.
Just 1 second. Give me 3, 2, 1. Well, just wanted to know maybe how many of you have you is our Purple Couch, has it rang a bell? Have you seen it on media? Just put it in the chat, or you've never heard of it.
Yeah, I never heard of a Purple Couch.
Excellent.
Brought it up.
Can you see my presentation? Sorry. Let's see. Oh God. All right. Can you see my presentation? Am I on mute?
We can see it.
Okay. Am I on mute?
I can
No.
hear you.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Let's see. All right. Well, I want to thank ODIS for this opportunity to present. Basically, this is a slide with all just kind of like my thinking with the international school educators and our Purple Couch and all this. So it's pretty much the idea about this is kind of see what sort of a network we can kind of create between all the interests here. So we have the International School Educators Group, which started in 2019. It's where educators connect. And our Purple Couch kind of started as my passion project as the learning hub for identity language, which is not written there, gender and sexuality. And it's based from some of the readings I've been just enjoying. So also what I'm hoping to do is create some sort of a platform where GSAs connect, and also possibly a global conference in 2025. So looking for different ways we can interact now and in the future. So basically a quick story about the International School Educators. It's an independent international LGBT community. It's not affiliated with any international school or public organism yet. Since 2019, it's grown steadily to 800 plus members. Typical member profile is an international school educator who identifies as a member of the LGBT community and also allies of the LGBT community. The content is news, affinity groups, podcasts, interviews, publications, networking, job search. It's a professional, has a family feel to it, filled with resources. It's student-centered, educator-centered, and school-centered. No funds yet. We partner with ALOC. I'm also collaborating with the IDA Continuum in terms of standards and policies, and also collaborates with ODIS, and there's the link to the group. So basically, this is just kind of like a timeline of what's happened. If you look on the left, it says 2019, and to the right, it's 2025. It all started there with a Facebook, a website, Twitter, Instagram, and another Facebook. I have to be honest, these social media initiatives outside of Facebook have been a bit of a frustration for me. So they've been like frustrated attempts to get this going. So I've kind of kept it in the Facebook group. And our Purple Couch is just kind of like a space where we can discuss topics around identity, language, gender, and sexuality. And that's something I'm looking to develop further. Exactly what I'm hoping to create is educators, but also trans educators as well, and also women as well, who identify as LBT or I. And also I just kind of put this timeline across in terms of what is going on in the world as well. So some of the objectives I hope to accomplish are increased traffic between GSAs, trans educators, LGBTQI women, and host possibly a global conference in some form into 2025. So anyway, so this is a more simplified timeline. What you can't change, we're here, and hopefully we can move on together and make better changes for the future. There are a lot of topics here that I'm going to in this presentation, but I'm just going to flash through them literally so that we can have time for discussion. But this is basically a little bit of an explanation of the roles I've held at different times. I've been a student, educator, administrator, and a consultant in all different types of schools, curriculums, which has given me a lot of experience, and ability to project trends, and also a long-term vision as to how international schools function. My experience in Madrid has also been quite diverse, as I've worked in both private and public sectors, and the public sectors in collaboration with my LGBT NGO, giving workshops to students on diversity, inclusion, and LGBT content. In my experience, really, I think being queer nearly anywhere, it's all about being in and out of the closet. That's kind of like what we've been talking about, and different forms of oppression where, you know, sometimes you're married, but on documents you're single. You have to refer to your partner as your friend. A spouse visa, sometimes it's just not a viable option to us. Limited access to adoption, oppressed identity expression, and we also still have to undergo rumors, bullying, and aggressions. Also, just was also looking at some issues at international school where institutionalized heteronormativity still is a major norm in the culture, and how the curricula tends to evade basically LGBT topics as well. So these are some articles that are available online. And the effects of this is that sometimes we're not putting this as a priority because it involves a lot of risks, also our own reputation, a lot of pressure. We have to deal with complaints, judgments, safety, well-being, and disagreements. So sometimes that may not be put as a priority because of these issues right now. Anyway. Also, navigating discussion topics in conservative environments. They're basically pretty much three topics that go on with LGBT, which are criminalization, protection, and recognition. There's a report by ILGA that comes out every year about state-sponsored homophobia, and basically it talks about issues, basically homophobia and transphobia in different contexts. So, but anyway, it speaks about issues like deportation, sexual acts that are punishable by jail, even death, humiliation, the effects of Sharia law, and marriage and adoption as well. Also, the lack of LGBT sex ed really does lead to a whole lot of problems and aggravations, and really isn't all sex ed about child protection. That's kind of a thought that I had while putting this all together. So a lack of sex ed also leads to all of these problems and aggravations. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with EqualDex, but it's pretty much it's a non-government website, but it's kind of a like crowdsourced data, which includes the equality index of countries worldwide, but it also has some different maps there where you can filter and see different topics such as homosexuality, housing discrimination, conversion therapy, employment discrimination, and such. So it's interesting just to see how the map shifts colors. Sorry. Also, I wanted to thank, this is some of the content that's been shared in the Facebook group as well. I think the Facebook group tends to help all educators become aware of what sort of topics and developments are trending in the LGBT framework around the world. I want to thank a lot of you who are in this meeting today for all the initiatives that you have shared at your school through podcasts, hosting the podcast, speaking at the podcast as well, with all the initiatives. And I think that this space really helps us bring together a lot of security, and it's also kind of like an outlet and a sounding board for many of us to kind of feel relieved and connected and understood. Also wanted to thank more people in here in terms of their work with international teacher podcasts, allyships, liberties, identity-centered learning, affinity groups, consultancy, chats, and writing and publications such as Wise Education and Allied, the Allied podcasts, and Emily Meadows Consulting, and Justin's initiative with the chat. Also,
Yes.
sorry. If you want to cut me off, that's fine.
Well, if you want to present one last slide, that's fine. I also wanted to add, because you mentioned Emily Meadows as well as Sadie Hollins. So the next video we'll be watching is by Sadie Hollins. But as Emily mentioned in the chat, and I also mentioned, there is a I don't know if you can see this. Oh no, it's there are some posters. I've shared the link that Emily has made, some "You Belong Here" posters.
Oh, okay.
Do you have any final slides that you'd like to share, Janka?
I will just flash through the presentation, and then we can maybe I won't say anything, but I'll just flash through the presentation. It's about language, gender, sexuality, Trevor Project.
Is there a place where these slides are available for those who haven't seen them yet and want to?
I can make them available. I was thinking about maybe putting them in the Facebook group, possibly. I can put a link in the chat for sure. But
I will also be copying down the chat for any references to books people recommended and stuff.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, there's been some great recommendations.
Anyway, so this is that was it. I'll put it in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. And these all look like really great initiatives, and I love how there's such a great network already of people who have been working together, and a lot of potential events to be doing again. And in the chat, people have been sharing books by Ocean Wong. I mentioned the book I was reading by Alexander Chi, and there was I think Kanako shared a book that she read, The 2000s Made Me Gay by Grace Perry. That sounds great just for the title. Is my screen still sharing? Hold on.
Was mine still sharing? I think that's
All right.
Okay, perfect.
Here we go. So this is what Emily Meadows made, the series of posters. So as you can see, there's a whole bunch of languages. I think you wrote a great article about this, Emily, which is on our resource list, talking about bringing a feeling of safety for queer students and things like that. A lot of great things. So yeah, please do think that this is an available set of resources. I don't know if anyone wants to comment on the amazing presentation that Janka just shared. If not, we can also watch Sadie Hollins' video on safeguarding. Are there any thoughts, questions, or queries, even by the people listening who are not panelists? Thank you for the docs, Janka.
Can I just jump in to share? Emily's poster has sort of acted as a conversation starter because we posted the Vietnamese version in our office, and the kids walked by it, and it led to me coming out to my students for the first time this year because they were asking about it. They straight up was like, "Are you LGBT?" which LGBT are you? And I'm like, oh, guess I'm doing this now. And so I just want to say, like, thank you, Emily, for just getting that conversation started. And if anyone's sort of looking for a way to kind of subtly roll that conversation out, I think those posters are fantastic for that. You're muted.
Thanks, Kanako. I love that story so much. It like moves me almost to tears, but also I love the which LGBTQ are you? It's such a like kid way to ask something. And I want to say too, like part of my inspiration for creating that poster series is that I worked as a school counselor in Kuwait before going into private practice, and I had 3 things on my door. I was the high school counselor in the high school office, so I had my name. And then I had a safe space poster that specifically said, you know, this space is safe for people of all genders, all sexual identities, etc. And then I had the same thing underneath it in Arabic. And that was all that was on my front door. And some people would come in and raise an eyebrow and be like, you think you can get away with this? But I never was asked to take it down. And later, I did have several students who graduated from the school, came back and told me that they weren't out at the time, they weren't out during school, but that they had seen it and that it really made a difference for them. So I thought, oh, we should have stuff like this in every school classroom, every office, every building, regardless of where you are in the world. So I'm happy to create these in other languages. If you let me know if there's a language missing, I use always the first language speakers to help me get these. I don't speak all these languages, but thanks. And thanks for the story, Kanako, again.
Thank you so much both for sharing that. Yeah, I feel like also because I am of Vietnamese origin, but I don't speak Vietnamese. So just seeing this kind of, it feels good. I think that, like you both said, it makes a huge difference just feeling like there's little signs everywhere that say this is a safe space. I think I once saw on the internet like a bumper sticker with like a rainbow. It said, come out wherever you are. And it's sort of a subtle way for the owners of that car to be like, you know, we're allies or we're queer. I'm not sure what they were saying, but it was a great way of saying, hey, this is a potentially safe space. Why don't we, so it is currently 1:51 here. We're probably going to go over the 1 hour thing. So if anyone, particularly the panelists, you have somewhere to go to, it's going great so far. So hope you can stick around. If not, that's fine. Let me present this video by Sadie Hollins, who works at Council of International Schools.
My name's Sadie Hollins.
Hold on.
First of all, I just want to say a huge thank you to Swai and Clara for putting on this really important event. Just to introduce myself a little bit. My pronouns are she, her. I identify as lesbian or gay. I'm currently working at an international school in Thailand with my wife. We work at the same school. My role is head of sixth form, and I'm also the editor of the Wellbeing in International School magazine, and I'm from the UK. So Swai very kindly reached out and just kind of asked me to share a little bit about an article that I wrote for the Council of International Schools last year, and it was based on a really good webinar that Katie Rigg put together from the Council of International Schools on safeguarding LGBTQ+ staff and students. So I have to say a big thank you to Katie. This very much came from the work that she put together, and the panelists that are really kind to share their experiences and their time from Stonewall, from an international school in Zimbabwe, and also Dr. Emily Meadows. So just to kind of explain a little bit about the blog, it's kind of I guess a starting point for schools that are on this journey, just to kind of raise some key areas that they that would be kind of a good starting point for them. So it just starts out with a little bit of context in terms of statistics related to the increased rates of mental health problems, bullying and challenges that unfortunately many people within the LGBTQ plus community do face at schools, both staff and students. I would say within this, I do lean on UK-centric data, so I appreciate that it can't be extrapolated outwards and generalised, but I think it just kind of gives a starting point of like what we're looking at and the challenges that unfortunately people can face within this community. And what I would say is what was really important that Dr. Emily Meadows shared was that being LGBTQ plus isn't a risk factor for anything, but stigma and discrimination creates the risks. From that context, we then talk a little bit about who is welcome in the school, in your school communities, and is your school community truly inclusive? And it looks a little bit about the work that Emily Meadows and Daniel Wickner have done on intent versus the impact. Following that, it just kind of highlights 3 areas as a starting point that serve as a point of discussion and work for building, for creating, for cultivating a truly inclusive international school. So the 3 kind of areas that it touches on briefly and provides resources for schools to kind of go and delve into this in more detail. First of all, language and the importance of language, not as a communication tool, but as a tool for justice. And I share a really great resource here on multilingual perspectives on pronouns from Tricia Friedman, which we highly recommend checking out. So that section talks about gender inclusive language and the importance of that, and also the importance of pronouns. The second section talks a little bit about curriculum and visibility, and share some of the Stonewall resources around this. So Stonewall have got some really brilliant resources. I'd highly encourage schools and teachers to check that out. The third section then talks a little bit about LGBTQ plus staff and hiring. And this was a really interesting part of the webinar that Dr. Emily Meadows talked a bit more around. I guess in terms of the idea that not all international schools will be based in contexts that are like wholly inclusive, supportive of LGBTQ rights. But this visibility piece is important, and it's important to recognise that it is the staff member's choice. With any LGBTQ plus staff member, they will be researching more than anyone else the context that they are looking to work in. So it's not for schools to decide this. If you have a queer teacher, TA, staff member that's looking to come to your school, it's important for that person to make the decision. And what, as a school, what you can do is just kind of be honest about the legal situation, about your rights within the country, but also putting people in contact with other queer member staff that are maybe already at the school community, so they can get a clearer idea of what it's actually to be there. So that's a very quick whistle-stop tour of the article. I'm sure that there's a lot. There is a lot more to add, but again, appreciate the opportunity to share this, and thank you.
Cool. All right. Sadie Hollands' article is available on our resource list, just like a lot of things that we'll be adding. Thank you so much, Kanako, for recommending the podcast, I think, that you showed in the chat. And so because we thought that we wanted to take more time to discuss various topics, we are probably not going to discuss all of the topics that were in the, is this still presenting? Or is this stuff? All of the topics. So we'll probably have time for the shout out for Sophie afterwards, if you're ready to present. I just wanted to ask, number one, does anyone have anything they wanted to add to what Sadie was saying in her video? About safeguarding?
Just one of the things that makes me sort of hesitant to come out to my colleagues. I think I'm maybe more hesitant to share with my colleagues than I am with my students, for the fear of how like adults see queer people versus how kids see queer people. And I guess there's no way to know how adults feel until I come out or until somebody does, until that topic is brought up. And so, just like Justin was saying earlier, like schools as a whole need some sort of consistency or some consistent message shared from admin, from teacher leaders, that kind of establishes the expectations of the community in terms of acceptance and inclusion. And I think that that'll maybe help create sort of a safer space, where people might feel a little more comfortable.
Yeah, definitely. And like with staff, it's particularly because I remember I went to like 5 or 6 different schools, and there were no queer teachers at all, at least who were out openly. I think maybe one where you could tell that other staff and even students were sort of making fun of him, even though he wasn't openly out. Thank you. Goodbye, Aiko. What was I going to say? Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, I also had staff who were quite openly conservative. So I remember in Shanghai in particular, that I had some American teachers who voted for Trump, for example. And so it is something that creates an atmosphere where you're not sure about whether you're safe. Thank you, Emily, for coming. It was nice to see you. The recording will be available for anyone who couldn't make it or who couldn't stay till the end. I also wanted to add really quickly, while we were looking at more resources to add, next week is the Day of Silence for GLSEN, which is, I believe, the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network. And so they have this really great calendar that I think would be very practical, that talks about not just queer topics and dates of celebration that can be used as learning opportunities, so like Non-Binary People's Day, Stonewall, World AIDS Day, but also events like Native American Heritage Month, Lesbian Visibility Day, and Islamic Heritage Month. I think these are all very based on American traditions recognized in the United States, but I think they are very cool. And so we will probably have time for one more topic and then go to Q&A if anyone has any questions that they'd like to send out. But I wanted to ask Sophie from International School of Prague, if you're still around, if you'd like to share a bit what you have done with Spectrum.
Yeah, hi. So this is quite humbling because all of you guys have done such amazing things, but what we have tried to do at our school was like we presented to like high school teachers on like how to address LGBTQ people in the classroom, and we're trying to also expand like our club kind of to lower schools, like middle school and elementary school. So we've done like we're doing middle school presentations in their like health classes, and we recently had Ally Week where we tried to like read like queer books to elementary school students, which was like quite amazing for me to see because they were incredibly receptive. And I know that when I was their age, I had no idea like this even existed. So it was quite cool to see that like in the span of like 10 years, it's changed quite a lot. And we've also started doing like monthly forums where we talk about like a variety of subjects like healthy relationships or mental health issues, where we try to invite as many people to come. And Douglas, you reminded me of this, but I think like I was talking to one of my friends and they were talking about how like my brother, who was a previous leader of the club and like one of few trans people in our school, how like they were really inspired by him and that it extremely helped them to see someone older who had come out and like started transitioning during school, and that it really helped them. And yeah, one of like the previous things we did like from previous leaders was like the gender neutral bathroom. And there's like an article on that in the resources list if you want to hear more.
Wow, that's really great to hear. Like, how much has changed in the past 10 years. I don't know if any of the other panelists have something they want to add or just react to. Yeah, Janka.
Hi, Sophie. Let's see. So, see, Spectrum and Pride. I was wondering how have you, let's see, have you been able to connect with other GSAs at other international schools to see how to work initiatives at your school safely? Because I know the Czech Republic is perhaps not maybe the most open of societies.
No, yeah, this was definitely something I actually wanted to ask myself, like, because like, while I think our community is quite open, like the Czech Republic definitely is not. Like for someone to go out like and to appear like very queer looking, like I don't know how to put that in a good way, but like for someone to appear like in an androgynous way maybe would be quite like harmful for them, or I would be scared to be dressed in like rainbows and everything. Like I know it would be dangerous, so like I personally don't probably know. And we usually have CISA Pride where we talk about these issues with like other schools, and unfortunately this year it's not happening. But yeah, so that's a place where we usually talk about this.
Okay. What would you say your GSA would need to be, I guess, stronger, better, more, let's say, respected? What would you see would be one of the biggest needs?
I think it's like we tried to reach out also to the parents because we thought that would be something like an issue that we wanted to address, but we really didn't get like a lot of I don't know, like we tried to do like a meeting and there was like a really bad turnout, and so we're still trying to figure out how to like address the parents in the community.
Okay. What would you, and in terms of the let's say the student community, how have the impressions been among the student community?
I think they've been quite good. Like, I mean, we have like in past years, like our Spectrum Club, it's been like 4 people, 5 people, and now this year we got an enormous group from like 9th grade coming to high school, and like in middle school, like we connect with their group as well, and it's really big, and so yeah, it's really cool to see that like we're definitely getting like bigger as a club.
Awesome. Thank you, Sophie.
All right, thank you for those questions. I was really moved, like what you said about the clubs reading out stories to the younger students. I think that's really, really cool. And like you said about your brother being an inspiration and a role model for younger students, it definitely makes a difference having queer teachers as well as older queer students. So I think it's amazing, honestly. And when I came across the article about your school and the gender neutral bathrooms, and then when I saw sort of the internal dialogue happening with the students at American International School Bucharest, talking about how they were looking up to your school. Like they had AISB students in the Bite, their student magazine newspaper, did a whole article talking about International School of Prague and how great the clubs are, and yeah, Alley Week and great initiatives like that. All of these ideas for like Alley Week, a day of silence, no name calling day, they're also initiatives that can be found on the GLSEN school calendar that I showed earlier. Although I think a lot of people here probably already know about it. There was also a really interesting comment from someone in the chat saying that there is a similar student presentation at the Bavarian International School, and it was very useful. So I don't think anyone has questions for the Q&A or any other comments. So as I said, there are initiatives by American International School Bucharest, more things by International School Prague. Thank you so much, Sophie, for presenting all of that, I think. And it takes a lot of courage also, like, to be one of the only student people attending a webinar. So it was really nice to have you here. I think most of our attendees have left because you were probably all going to the ALOC community visioning, as well as our panelists who've left. There's also Queer at ISD, International School Dakar, who we talk about a lot on our page. And they recently even did a poll on their Instagram with students to see like what kind of issues could be addressed, and overall satisfaction of representation and treatment of queer people at their school. If no one has any questions for the Q&A, I think we're just going to stop here and see if, I don't know if anyone has any last comments, and we'll stop the recording and everyone can sort of chat casually. I don't know. Yeah, Gianca, did you raise your hand?
No, well, I wanted to say thank you very much for this opportunity to connect with everyone, and it's been great to see all of the initiatives, and particularly the first time really to get an eye-opener into student initiatives. So I'm hoping to see that grow. So thank you.
Yeah, I think there'll definitely be more. Wait, am I on mute? No, I think there'll definitely be more things. So we had also other topics that we thought we might have time for probably in the next webinar. Kanako was talking about going to talk about her experiences and challenging white perspective of queer experiences in Asia. Justin, they were also going to talk about queering elementary classrooms. And so I think, yeah, we'll call it a day for today. We have this resource list. I think we might even share this. I'll see if we can share this on our website, this slide, as well as other resources. For those of you who don't follow us already, we are Decolonise Intel on Instagram and Twitter. We also have our website, odis.card.co. I'll put everything here. It's got all of our information. Also, an FYI, we just added a PayPal in case anyone would like to donate to us, since we are just two students running this for the past two and a half years. Yeah, apart from that, I'm going to stop presenting. And I just want to say thank you so much for everyone, all the panelists who came and spoke. Thank you to all the attendees. And I'll share the recording. Please share it with anyone else who would be interested. And yeah, have a lovely rest of your weekend. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jaka. Thank you, Douglas and Sophie, Kanako, and everyone else. Bye.